People are still asking me for recommendations on what books they should read, so here's another video about the last 6 books I read. So the book I finished yesterday was called Inventing the Future. It's about capitalism and politics and the future of both of those things and how the authors in particular want to change and shape that future. And given that it's about post-capitalism, I can't help but compare it to Paul Mason's book, which is just called Postcapitalism, which I talked about in the last one of these videos I did, and which was about very much the same thing. It's a good book, but there's a lot of details that they kind of skim over. They have a habit of saying, oh, we need to do this and we need to do this, and they don't really say how that can be done, and they don't really take the time to bring you up to their level and explain to you the background conditions of the economics that you need to know. Whereas Mason really delves into the nitty-gritty, and like the first half of his book is like explaining all the background stuff you need to know very clearly, and then it ends with actually recommending specific policies. The one thing they do have over Mason is they discuss universal basic income in quite a little bit more detail than him, which is nice. But yeah, if you're looking for a book on post-capitalism, I'd go with Mason's. Next up was Franz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth. This is a book about colonialism and its impact on people. But as well as that, he also talks about all the ways in which a revolution that seizes power can go wrong. It can become corrupted, or it can lose its way, or it can just try and create a new version of the colonial administration in its place, and all the different players and characters in that revolution who might, even unwittingly, sabotage it. So it's really very interesting as a political call to action, but also a cautionary tale at the same time. The book is written more to the victims of colonialism than it is to somebody like me, a beneficiary of colonialism as a white Brit. But I would recommend it to anybody for whom colonialism isn't a lived reality. If colonialism is a word that you've heard people talk about and you maybe know some of the sort of abstract economics or military history of it, then that's cool. But this will really give you an insight into what it means on the ground. Before that, I read a psychology book. It's more like psychology and cognitive theory. It's by Daniel Kahneman. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. Kahneman is a psychologist, but he won the Nobel Prize in economics for some of the research which this book popularized. What Kahneman's interested in is how people can be biased, essentially. He talks about a whole different bunch of biases and psychological effects and tendencies that arise as a result of the way our brains work, which causes us to evaluate things in different ways, sometimes mistaken ways, especially statistics. The reason he won the Nobel Prize for economics for the research he talks about is that he then takes some time to apply it to the state of modern economics and how modern economic theory assumes a whole bunch of stuff about human decision-making that isn't actually true. Do you like my t-shirt, by the way? It's got Jeff Goldblum on it. My brother got it for me for my birthday. Before that, I read a book that I don't have to show you, I'm afraid, because I lent it to my girlfriend, but it's called Angry White Men by Michael Kimmel. He spent a long time traveling around America interviewing different groups of angry white men, everybody from Klan members to very disenfranchised rural workers to men's rights activists, fathers' rights campaigners, every single brand of angry white men, people on the very like neo-Nazi political right wing and sort of slightly more moderate right wingers, Tea Partiers as well, and gives you some interviews and quotes from people. He really sort of gives them a chance. He went to them and said, look, you know, you're a neo-Nazi, I'm a Jewish intellectual, so we might not get on, but I want to give you the chance to say what you're about, because I want to know, like, what are you angry about? He says they're sending their mail to the wrong address, because he says that a lot of the people who have become so economically disenfranchised, and that is at the heart of a lot of the grievances of a lot of the people he interviews, he says they are economically disenfranchised, but they're blaming it on women in the workplace, or they're blaming it on immigrants, or they're blaming it on Jews, when actually it's neoliberalism and the economic conditions of today that have disenfranchised them. So it's really fascinating and an even-handed and charitable look into this world. And before that, I read a fiction book. This one was a gift from a fan, I think. Yeah, it was. It was a gift from Oliver in Germany, who saw it on my Amazon wishlist, and he sent me some Amazon book vouchers as a thank you. And in fact, he got me Angry White Men as well. But it's called Beauty Queens. It's about a bunch of girls who are contestants in a national beauty competition, a beauty pageant. and they crash land on a desert island and they have to survive. So the obvious point of comparison is to Lord of the Flies, but it's kind of different because Lord of the Flies was about, spoiler alert, humans being inherently vicious, and the boys, as soon as they get the chance, they turn on each other and they kill each other. But in Beauty Queens, the idea is more that the girls have been taught to be vicious and taught to be cruel to each other and to not cooperate, and it's by being alone on the island and away from the very corporate influences that govern the pageant that they learn to work together. Some of the commentary is a little bit on the nose. I mean, it is written for people younger than me, so it's kind of fine. It's written for tweens and teens. And some of the later stuff that happens when you find out what's really going on the island and what the corporation is really up to kind of starts to read a little bit like an episode of Totally Spies. Not that I know what an episode of Totally Spies would be like, of course. I do be advised there are some tasteful sex scenes in it, so you know, if you're gonna buy it for a niece or a nephew or something, make sure that you scan those parts before somebody gets cross at you. And last but not least, Simone de Beauvoir, Le Deuxième Sexe, which is an incredibly famous book. It's a classic of existentialism and feminism. De Beauvoir examines women's roles in societies, her contemporary society, which was 20th century France, and also right back to sort of prehistoric era, examining the ways that the roles of women in society have changed and the ways that they have been different from men. And she goes into huge detail, so there's whole sections of the book devoted to girlhood, to young womanhood, to motherhood, to elderly womanhood, and she sort of examines and compares the way that women are encouraged to behave and encouraged to be and live to the way that men are encouraged to live and behave and be. So rather like Fanon putting meat on the bones of colonialism, if feminism is something that you've only kind of heard about, or the idea that women are oppressed is something you've only sort of heard about academically or appreciated academically, this will definitely put meat on the bones for you. And those are the last 6 books I read. Maybe there's some cool things there that you can check out. If you'd like to support the show and Patreon isn't really your bag, I do have an Amazon wish list of books that you can get from me as a gift. If you wanted to do that, I'll link you to it below. Or as always, you can go to patreon.com/philosophytube and you can help provide me with research materials that way.